Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Truth with the Tech Boy show. Today, we're going to be doing the political compass test. So, without further ado, let's check this out. So, this is the political compass test. You're going to see where I land on the political compass. Unfortunately, they have English here in this failed nation of England. JK, JK, guys. Anyway, we're going to do this in English. 24 years of the political compass test. All right. Number one, if economic globalism is inevitable to primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations. You know what? Won't disagree on that one. Let's go transnational corporations. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Strongly agree, people. Obviously, that would assume that we'd have to be wrong about something. All right. Number three, no one chooses the country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Obviously, strongly disagree. Unless you live in North Korea, then don't be proud of North Korea. Our race has superior qualities compared to other races. No. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, I mean, you really have to think about that. You know, if you think about this in complex GCAM geopolitics, I'm still going to say no on that one. That's not how it works. I mean, sometimes you'll be friends. Most likely, you'll be rivals. I mean, think about SSA and Val. Like, she will be allied with Val because she. I mean, who? I guess she opposed things that we also opposed, but she also was allied with people who were smacking our um, friends and allies in the faces with shoes. So we kind of had to manage that. She was against Hazel. We were pro Hazel. So it was more of a rival relationship because we wanted to make sure that Hazel still got to exist on the planet. That was very important, very important. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Obviously, strongly agree. International law, war crimes, it's just like it just seems like a bunch of whiners to me, honestly. Now some of those laws do need to exist. I'm not in favor of committing genocides or whatever. That's illegal across the board. International law, the UN, the International Criminal Court. This is run by a bunch of idiots who hate this country and who hate the West. So, international law is sometimes stupid. All right, there's now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Obviously, strongly disagree on this one because, that's what we are, entertainment. We are entertainment on this channel. And I'm not going to vote myself out of a career. It's like I'm not going to vote myself out of a career by advocating parental control applications or something like that. All right, people are ultimately more divided by class than nationality. Maybe, I guess. But this does have some communist leanings. This does seem a bit commie to me, so I'm going to say no. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. That's a good question. I don't remember what I answered. What is it? Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Yeah, I'll agree to that one. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Some maybe, like don't pollute, pollution regulations, but I'm not in favor of banning gas-powered cars, etc. I wish there was a neutral button here. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. No, that's commie. The freer the market, the freer the people. I'd say I agree to that, even though it does have some libertarian leanings, which I am not. Okay, just pick a side, libertarians, and stick to it. It's a sad reflection of our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. That is absolutely ridiculous. The water out of the lake is not clean for you to drink. They had to go through. They had to get the water. They had to buy access to it. They had to filter it, and they had to sell it to you. You be glad that you're getting it for $1. Obviously, strongly disagree. Water does not grow on trees. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought or sold. That is ridiculous on its face. What, land should be free? You should just get land. Okay, so who owns it? Who owns it? You just get it? Supposed to play rock, paper, scissors for it? Obviously not. Strongly disagree. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. Look, as long as they didn't do anything illegal, if it's for their own gain and they did it in a completely legal way, I'm completely for it. Like Lexi Reed is able to influence people to get what she wants. As long as she's not breaking any laws, I'm fine with it. So I strongly disagree. It is not regrettable at all. Those people are great. I mean, personal fortunes by investing in the stock market, YOLOing the stock market, leaving and not doing anything, fine with me. All right, protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I mean, maybe once. So I guess I agree. Sometimes necessary, once maybe. Who knows? The only social responsibility with companies to be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. No, because if OnlyFans went public, it would also be the responsibility to wipe off all the porn from the platform. So that's why I disagree with that. The rich are too highly taxed. I guess. Those with the ability to pay to have access to higher standards of medical care. I mean, ask for anything. People are not owed a car, right? But let's just say hypothetically, people are owed a car. Okay, you're gonna get the basic car, but if you want a better car, you want a Range Rover, you want a Aston Martin, you're not just gonna get that because you feel like you deserve it. You're gonna get that because you feel like because you have the money to pay for it. So I'm gonna agree to that one. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public, like lying, like violating FTC. Yeah, sure. A genuine free market requires restrictions of the ability for predatory multinationals to create monopolies. I'm going to disagree with this one. I always hear this thing about people whining about, companies that are buying up housing and how that should be illegal. Maybe for foreign companies, fine, but American companies, like, what, you expect housing just to be free? Like, what do you expect them to do? Just not buy stuff? Nah, you should be able to buy as much things as you want. All right, on to the next page. Page 3. Abortion. When a woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Strongly agree to that one. All authority should be questioned. We won't disagree with that one because, God is an authority and he should not be questioned, and all means all. All right, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. In what? Like national defense? Yeah, you nuke New York, we're gonna nuke Moscow back. But like in personal life, no, because I'm a Christian. But in political, in a war, I guess it's the political compass test, not the Christianity compass test. So I'm gonna agree to that one. All right, taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters and museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I'm gonna disagree with this one. I like the museums. I don't know why it's including theaters in this one. So I would have been neutral. I would have been maybe like a slight disagreement. I don't know why it's dragging theaters into this, but museums are great. But because you're on the taxpayer's dime, that means we can't control what we do and don't have in the museum. So you don't get to just put anything random anti-American content in a museum that the taxpayers themselves are funding. Okay, that's not how this works. We pay, we get to see what we want to see. All right, schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. That's ridiculous. Okay, I know some of these kids, SSA LTW summer famously, she was in school like, you went to school 5 days a week, she might be there like 3. So she passed, so she graduated. Good for her. I'm a fan of summer, but school attendance should obviously be mandatory. Obviously, like what? All people have their rights, but it's better for us that different sorts of people to keep to their own kind. That just sounds weird and racist. Strongly disagree to that one as well. That's one of the reasons I'm against the there's this video of these people who are trying to create their own white commune town. And in a vacuum, I guess I'd be fine with that. Like, if all the racists want to go live in their own town by themselves, fine. I don't care. But the problem with this is that we do not live in a vacuum. We live in a society. And in this society, there are more than just white people. There's people of the different races here. And if this were to happen, if the white nationalists, which is a small sliver, tiny percent of the population that are coming together trying to create their own commune in this, then, it's probably going to snowball with black nationalists doing this, Asian nationalists doing this, et cetera, et cetera. And, the white people are, doing whatever they want. And the mostly 80% moderate people are going to be lumped in with this. So all the white people are going to have to go to the white commune. All the black people have to go to the black commune. But the people who lead these communes are going to be radical and extreme. I do not want to have to live in an all-black commune run by like Jasmine freaking Crockett or something like that. Not a chance, which is why I'm against it. I'm only against it because of the retaliatory efforts that could happen. So no, not a chance. I'm going to have to strongly disagree on this. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Sure, whatever. Just kids don't do anything wrong. It is natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I'd say it's natural. Am I going to say it's good or not? I'm not going to comment on that. But is it natural? Yes. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. No. Ban drugs. Okay. And, some people are going to be like, oh, well, alcohol, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Look, we tried that. It didn't work. And quite frankly, I'm not a fan of alcohol. If we banned it all, I'd be fine. I've never had it. Never will. All right. The prime function of schooling to be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Prime function, yes, but also hopefully you can make some friends there as well. It's not. I'm not technically against homeschooling, but I would be more in favor of Christian schooling or private schooling over homeschooling because you could meet people and make friends. All right. People with seriously inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. I'm going to disagree with this one because you shouldn't be telling people who can and cannot reproduce as long as they're reproducing with one man, one woman. That's the only stipulation that should be possible. But if they have the disabilities, it doesn't inherently mean that the person is a bad person. What means if they're a bad person is if they are sinful, right? So they didn't turn and repent to Jesus Christ. They just decided to stay and live in their own sin. That's what makes you a bad person, not whatever mental or physical disabilities that you have. All right, on to the next question. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I'm going to disagree with this one because the most important thing for a child to learn is the love of Jesus Christ and the love of him, and to accept Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior. That is the most important thing. Discipline is important, but not as important as your eternal salvation and security in Christ Jesus. All right, on to the next question. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. Obviously, strongly disagree with this. There are some uncivilized people who should be witnessed to. All right, those who are able to work and refuse opportunities should not expect society's support. Obviously, strongly disagree. He who does not work does not eat, unless you're on Instagram and English plus one is in your comments. Then you ate 4 plus 4, you ate. Anyway, when you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Thinking about positive things. A is for attitude is a good episode on this for an Adventures in Odyssey. Some pastors talk about this, like Joel Osteen. I'm going to agree with this statement as well. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated into their new country. Never say never. Okay, do you know how many immigrants there are? I'm pretty sure at least one of them has fully integrated into this country. Never say never. So I'm going to say I'm going to disagree on that one. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. I'm going to disagree on this one. Apple is a successful corporation, $1 trillion company, and I think it would be good for all of us to have Android phones. But what would be good for Apple would be if everyone had iPhones. So I'm going to say no to that one because I do not want to use an iPhone. I'm happy with my Samsung. All right, on to the next question. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, to receive public funding. No broadcasting institution to receive public funding? I'm going to say disagree on that one. Voice of America. I would see the point of defunding PBS and NPR because they have some anti-American communist propaganda. But I would be fine with of the radio stations outside of this country receiving funding so that we can send pro-America patriotic propaganda to them. I'm fine with propaganda inside the country to promote patriotic values, and I am extremely fine with it if it's outside the country. Just a little bit more oversight inside. All right, page 4 of 6. All civil liberties are being excessively curved at the name of counterterrorism. I'm going to disagree with this one. I know it's unpopular, but it's always people who are whining about civil liberties, etc., who are the most annoying people on planet Earth. So that's one reason I'm going to disagree with this one. Number 2, I know this is a hot take, but I like the Patriot Act. It's super high tech. It gives powers to the NSA. I'm a fan of the NSA. I'm going to click disagree. And no, guys, if I end up doing something, I don't know, get run over by a car, the NSA or CIA didn't kill me. I'm not funded by the NSA. I wish I was funded by the NSA, but they're not funding me. Okay. The significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. I mean, sure, that's technically a quote-unquote advantage, but the disadvantages outweigh it. I'm not going to advocate for one-party state. No, not a chance. Never on stream. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Again, controversial take here. I'm going to agree here. As long as the government isn't corrupt, and if the government is corrupt, then yes. But let's just assume the government is not corrupt, so we're going to agree with this one. The death penalty should be an option in the most serious crimes. Strongly agree. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. I'm going to say yes. We need to have structure. Maybe saying, hey, what about the president of the United States? Well, the president of the United States is, of course, in command of the nation, but he must answer to the Supreme Court and the American people and Congress must answer to the constituents. So it's basically a giant cycle. The people must answer to the laws that have been set above them by the state and local and governmental organizations, and the governmental organizations have to create good laws, because if they don't, they will be voted out. So it's a cycle. People will abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. I don't care. I really do not care about art at all. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. I'm going to agree with this one because there's always these rehabilitative justice programs. So a lot of people are early criminals out in the streets. I heard this story about this guy who stabbed a child. The knife broke. The child unfortunately died. Who got out 10 years later. Honestly, he probably should have gotten the death penalty or at least life in prison. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. I'd say agree. Let Jesus work on them. You're not Jesus. You're not God. Throw them in jail. Lock them up. Door away the key. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. More important to society? Probably. More important? No, because every person has their own worth. Every person was created in the image of God. But this is not the Christian political compass test. This is the political compass test. And I know, some people are going to come after me and say, hey, God's being infused in everything. And I'm going to say, sure, technically yes, but I'm still going to agree on this question. Mothers may have careers, but the first duty is to be homemakers. The first duty to their children is to make sure that their children are raised correctly and that they grow up. So I'm going to agree with this one, but with some stipulations. Some of these accounts online are like, a mother should always be at home. She should never work. A woman should not work. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Look, women have brains. They have arms. They have legs. They have IQs. They can think for themselves. They can make their own decisions. I just kind of feel that you're kind of enabling some laziness here. Everyone's like, oh, I just want to be a passenger princess and I want to be driven around by a man. No. That's not how this works. You don't get to be driven around like in a horse and carriage. You got arms, you can drive yourself. Okay, I'm not going to constitute laziness around it. I'm not saying that raising children is lazy, but I mean, these are some unmarried people or people who don't have children doing these things online. Oh, I don't want to work. I'm crying on my 9 to 5. And then we'll give them some sympathy like, oh, well, women shouldn't have to work. No, they should work. This doesn't make sense. This makes zero sense. I know some of these accounts like Michael Knowles, who I am a fan of, but Michael Knowles would be like, women shouldn't have to work. When they turn 18 or whatever, they stay with their parents and then they'll court and they'll get married and they'll go raise 10 children or something like that, but they should never actually have to work in the widget factory for Mr. Rutabaga making, et cetera, millions of dollars. No. Well, what makes them special that they don't have to work? I have to work. They should have to work too. You're not special. You're not a special snowflake. Get to work. You bums, and if you're going to cry on TikTok about it, I'm going to roast you about it. Okay, I've never cried on TikTok about me having to work. I like working. I'm a fan of working. Get to work, you lazy bums. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate science. Nope. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. The establishment. Everyone wants to be anti-establishment. Maybe the establishment is doing something if they were able to be established in the first place. Okay? The majority of people voted them in. Which is why, I'm not in favor of term limits. Look, if you are 107 years old and you were running for Congress for the 50th time and you win, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? It's the people's fault for electing a 107-year-old person who's on death's doorstep. As Theo Von said, he's on God's ring cam. He's on God's doorstep. And it's also the person who ran against him for not being able to beat an elderly 107-year-old man. Like, honestly, I don't really feel much sympathy for the people in Jasmine Crockett's district. She won 85-15. Okay, it was even hard to find statistics on the election because it was like an epic landslide. That's your fault for just being that stupid for voting 85-15. And it's also the other competitor's fault for not being able to beat Jasmine freaking Crockett. I say the same thing. Look, if you're going to lose to a 90-year-old person, if you cannot beat a 90-year-old person, you will not be able to make it in Congress. I'm sorry. Winning is half the battle. You got to be able to get the people on your side to agree with you. You got to get the people on your side to agree with your bill and to make your bill. If you cannot beat a 90-year-old person, then you didn't deserve to win. So, yeah, make peace with the establishment. Page 5 of 6. Astrology accurately nothing. Again, there's this Kids Corner episode about how astrology is bad because you might jump off a water tower or something. It's a ridiculous episode, but the point is the same. Astrology is useless, and the people who do astrology are kind of airheaded. You cannot be moral without being religious. I'm going to agree with that one. Strongly agree, actually. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Probably. Some people are naturally unlucky. Luck doesn't exist, but I do feel that there is this bubble around me that kind of prevents me from being successful. But maybe it's an act of God who's protecting me. I'm not going to say that's quote unquote unlucky. So I'm going to disagree with this one because it's probably a communist tinged question. It's more important that my child's school instills religious values. I'd say yes. But it depends on which religion. I don't want them being, my hypothetical children, being instilled with the wrong religion. So anything other than Christianity. Finally, a look at sex. Oh, well, sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. Not usually, always. It is always, always immoral. And it's being held at gunpoint. Then that's not immoral for you, it's immoral for the other person. So it's still immoral. A same-sex couple, no. Should not be, yeah, so strongly disagree. They should not be allowed to adopt. They shouldn't be allowed to be in a relationship in the first place. But adoption, no. Pornography, depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. I'm going to disagree on this one, though. My idea, I just run it for fun, is that we shouldn't technically illegalize it. What we should do is we should legalize the use of electricity to produce or distribute it. So, I mean, if they want to go use a pin, but that pin has to be made handmade. Okay, so it can't be a big pin because I'm pretty sure they use electricity in that. If they want to use a pin to draw something that they made outside with their own stick, and they have to make their own paper because paper is used with electronics, and they want to distribute it door to door, they can't use the mail system because the mail system uses electronics. Any use of electronics to produce or distribute it, look, if you can do that without any electricity, fine, because like only one person would see it. Also, I want a strict legal definition because there are some people online or on the Christian nationalist right who are like, oh, bikinis and crop tops are porn. They're not. Now, look, you can argue if they're immodest or not. Of course, I've argued multiple times that they're not immodest. But what you cannot argue is that they are porn. No. Okay, so the people who want to illegalize it, I'm in favor of illegalizing it. It's just that the people who want to illegalize also have some kooky opinions. And, you know, like I always say, I must defend the friends who don't know that I exist. Yeah, they'll know I exist soon. But, you know, I'm not going to stand here and just instantly just turn all of my quote-unquote friends that don't know who I am into total criminals overnight. That's not what I want to do, okay? It's also a protection thing because then if someone comes after me in 20 years from Media Matters saying, hey, you supported this, I'm going to say, hey, roll this tape. Roll this tape from October 10th, 2025. Look, I said the bikinis weren't porn, so you can't really get me on that. So if any photos leak, you can't do anything. All right. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. No, look, I mean, if these people want to sign a contract to say they want to shoot each other, that should be the business of the state. Absolutely disagree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I don't know. I'm going to agree with that. I'm going to agree. I've never felt it or whatever. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Absolutely. Sure. Let's see where I stand. But where's my dot? Authoritarian right? Libertarian left? This cannot be that can't. Oh, that's not me. I'm going to say, yeah, there we go. So economic right 2.5 and authoritarian 3.69. I think that's a pretty good. I'd say maybe I'm around here. This is my political compass test. Where do you guys stand? Where the free man shall stand. So God bless. Talk to you later.